Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Steve.
Glad you could all be with us today. We're going to sing, when I was growing up, this is always like the first song of the hymnal. For some reason, I just remember that always being the first song of the hymnal. All hail the power of Jesus' name. Y'all sing out loud, all right?
Listen, ladies. Hey, ladies, did you know they have opened up a new store in New York City? It's called the Husband Store. You can go there and shop for a husband. There are 6 floors in the store. You can only visit each floor one time, though. Each floor, you go up, the value increases. You may choose any item from any particular floor, but you cannot go down a floor. You can only go up the floor. So there was a woman who went to the husband store to find herself a husband. On the first floor, the sign reads, "These men have jobs." Wow, that sounded really good. So she went to the floor 2, and it says, "These men have jobs and love kids." Wow. Floor 3, "These men have jobs, love kids, and are extremely good looking." Wow, she thought, this sounds pretty good, but was compelled to go on to the next floor. Well, she does go to the 4th floor, and the sign reads, "These men have jobs, love kids, are drop dead good looking, and they help with the housework." "Oh, mercy me," she said, "I can hardly stand it." Still, she said, "I gotta go on." She went to the 5th floor. The sign read, "These men have jobs, love kids, drop dead gorgeous, help with the housework, and very strong romantic streak." But she couldn't stand it. She decided she had to just find what was on the 6th floor. 6th floor said, "You are the visitor of 31,456 to this floor. There are no men on this floor. This floor exists solely as proof that women are impossible to please."
Nice.
For you guys. Okay. struggling to make ends meet on first call salary, the pastor was livid when he confronted his wife with a receipt for a $250 dress she had bought. How could you do this? I was outside the store looking at the dress in the window, and then I found myself trying it on, she explained. It was like Satan was whispering in my ear, "You look fabulous in that dress, buy it." "Well," the pastor replied, "you know how I deal with that kind of temptation. I say, 'Get behind me, Satan.'" "I did," replied his wife, "but then he said, 'You look fabulous back there too.'" All right, this is it. A sick man turned to his doctor as he was preparing to leave the examining room and said, "Doctor, I'm afraid to die. Tell me what lies on the other side." Very quietly, the doctor says, "I don't know." "You don't know? You're a Christian man, and you don't know what's on the other side?" The doctor was holding the handle of the door. On the other side came a sound of scratching and whining, and as he opened the door, a dog sprang into the room, leaped on him with an eager show of gladness. Turning to the patient, the doctor said, "Did you notice my dog? He's never been in this room before. He didn't know what was inside. He knew nothing except that his master was here, and when the door opened, he sprang in without fear. I know little of what is on the other side of death, but I do know one thing. I know my master is there, and that's enough."
Yeah, I'll have to say the first one was my favorite, and I'll see if I can borrow that from you and go home, share that with my wife, and see how far it gets me today. Probably not far. Fair enough.
She got to fall for that.
Well, she knows I'm a 6th floor guy, and she just ended up here. So thankful for it, you know. Hey, Jimmy, good to see you, sir.
Yes, it is.
Good to see you, Miss Jill, as well.
Thank you.
Fashionable as always.
I'd like to say something really fast. I want to thank Donna because she thinks about this entire group. And I got a beautiful card from her, plus I've gotten cards from everyone else, but she sends it from this Bible study group. She has her own card program, and she is an angel, and we all know that. And I want to thank this Donna for all her care.
I'll send you a bill later.
All right, I promise I'll pay for it. And I am doing better, although I take 14 shots a day in my eyes, and all those shots go. And I'm going to have an ultrasound next Monday because of my swollen leg. Now I have other things going on, but keep praying for me because I know God is listening, and I really feel great. I mean, you know, I know I'm getting old, but
Well, you got the right attitude. That goes a long way. You know, just being grateful for what you can be grateful for, and even the other stuff, you just go along with it and find things to be grateful for in all circumstances. I think there's something in the Bible about that. That's good. Speaking of Bible, let's go to Acts 12. This is where we left off last time. We're going to jump right in because we have a unit test today. So we're going to make sure. Got a preacher in the room, so hopefully he'll get some of these right. And, you know, if you do get the most, you could win a Starbucks card. Some of y'all are stockpiling those suckers. You win all the time, and one day you'll be able to afford one of those coffees. All right, unfold myself today. Here we are in Acts chapter 12, where we left off last. If you'll remember, the structure of Acts being first in Jerusalem, then Judea and Samaria, and then the ends of the earth. As Jesus gave his Great Commission, Luke followed that plot and basically has told the story of how the church began in Jerusalem and how in the earliest days you had specific leaders that rose to the occasion. Of course, you had the apostles who were able to perform miracles, but not only that, people that they laid their hands on and ordained to do ministry also were able to do miraculous work as well. Philip is an example of that. And Philip went and did some good work in Judea and Samaria. And now, this last chapter we were in, we saw how the work was spreading to a place called Antioch. And Antioch is different because Antioch has a lot more Gentiles than any of the other places. In fact, this is likely the actual first Gentile converts, full-fledged Gentile converts, people who had really not much idea about the Old Testament. Everybody else that we saw in Acts, even the Ethiopian eunuch, knew about Isaiah, knew about some of the Old Testament enough that it seemed that they were already God-fearing Jews or God-fearing Greeks. Antioch was a place that was full of people from everywhere with all kinds of different backgrounds, paganism as a background, things like that. Well, this church does really well, even in the midst of persecution, and they are able to take care of some folks in Judea. So they send an offering to their brothers and sisters in Christ in Judea because they're going through persecution and famine there. So lots of good things are happening there in the midst of difficult environment. So that's where we are. In addition to that, Peter, so both Peter and Saul are two very important leaders that we see throughout Acts. In the beginning of Acts, chapters 1 through 8, really is a lot about Peter and what he's able to accomplish with the Jewish people. Now that we're in the latter half of Acts, all the way into 27, I think is the last chapter, you're going to see a lot of Paul's work and Barnabas and these guys. And so that's where the transition has been for us. So now we're going to see what happens in the beginning of chapter 12. We're going to check in with Peter real quick before we go on to see more of what Paul and Barnabas are doing. So here it is, chapter 12, verses 1 through 4. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw that this pleased the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the feast of unleavened bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by the 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. So there was a time of peace that we saw in chapter 10. So that's a blank there. The time of peace described in chapter 10 is now
I'm
over.
sorry, what page are we on? Because
This-
I wasn't here last.
You're okay?
16.
Page 16. There'll be a couple of little hiccups in here too that I'll try to explain. Page 16, and then we are on H. Yes. Time of peace described in chapter 10 is now over. Persecution starting up again. And this is starting with Herod Agrippa, who is the grandson of Herod the Great from Jesus' time. If you remember, Herod the Great was the one who was looking to essentially stop Jesus from being born, and then even after he was born, you have the slaughter of the innocents, as it's called, in some places, where you have a number of children under the age of 6, boys under the age of 6, that were put to death as Herod was just tearing up the place trying to look for Jesus. So that's his grandson that is now causing the second martyr. There may have been others that were martyred between Stephen and James, but this is the second one that's recorded in Acts. So that happens, and then Peter's put in prison. Now, Peter's an important part of the first century church. And there's a good chance that Herod has in mind to put him to death, right? Herod finds out, hey, this is popular among the Jews. I'm in charge of the Jewish people. I'm the king over the Jewish folks as the Romans have established me. So if this is politically popular, then I'm going to just keep going with it. Let me go to the top, and let me see if I can put this guy Peter to death as well. So Herod persecuted Christians because he wanted to win the support of the Jews. Jews is the blank there. This is the first record of persecution coming from the government. Where did persecution come from when Stephen was martyred? Coming from the Jews, specifically the Sanhedrin. Remember, Saul was in their number as a part of Brotherhood of Freedmen, which was a section of the Pharisees that he was a member of. So now you have a government official who sees it's popular with the Jews, and so he's doing this for political purposes. So far, the persecution has only come from the church, or actually from the Jewish people. So the Jews would be the blank there. James, who was the brother of John, is the first of the 12 apostles to be martyred. So he's the first of the apostles to be martyred. How many of the apostles were martyred total? You might know? 11 of them. The 12th one, it wasn't for a lack of trying. John, who died a natural death, as far as we can tell from history. This is all beyond what the Bible records. But church history says that John survived intense persecution with burning oil and exile. This is in Scripture that he was exiled to the island of Patmos. That's where he had the visions that he records in the book of Revelation. But he died of natural causes, still suffering a great deal. Every other apostle died a martyr's death. This goes to serve as evidence as to how true Jesus' resurrection was and everything that they encountered, that they were willing to die for that to a man. These were men that ran from the garden, if you remember. Many of them. Okay? So this is the first of the apostles. And then, if you remember, Stephen was one of the first deacons that was persecuted before, or was martyred. So Jesus actually predicted this would happen to his followers in Matthew 20:23. And Peter then is arrested, and it looks like he will be the next apostle that will be martyred. And Herod Agrippa knows that Peter is a popular leader among the Christians, and so he's got him under heavy guard 24 hours a day. And you could see the way that the security was set up. Luke is pretty specific about that. He talked about how many guards, right? He said guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. So that's 4 soldiers looking right at Peter over 4 shifts in a day. Right? So 6 hours a day they would be in charge of. So if one of them falls asleep, there will be another 3 of them that will be watching Peter. There's no chance that Peter will not be, at any given moment, under the watchful eye of a soldier, unless God has something to do with it. So, continues here, verses 5 through 11. Read that. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. The night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. So you got the 4, right? 2 were chained to him. 2 were standing at the door. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. I imagine that probably was not a pleasant way to wake up, but still. "Quick, get up," he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. The angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals," and Peter did so. "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me," the angel told him. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea what the angel was doing and was really happening. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea that what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. So maybe he didn't hit him hard enough for him to feel like he actually woke up completely. He's like, "Am I dreaming?" Or is he's imagining he's either seeing a vision of himself being broken out of prison, or that he's dreaming about it. And then, where was I? They passed, verse 10, they passed the first and second guards, came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. Then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I know without a doubt that the Lord sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish people were anticipating." Incredible. Incredible for Peter to experience this. And then after the fact, he's like, whoa, what just happened? And then puts it all together that he had been saved by God. So this escape happened as a result of what? Prayers of the church. Prayers of the church. You could ask the question, well, if they didn't pray, what would have happened to Peter? We're not sure. But sure is a good thing that they did pray. And then Peter believes that he's only seeing a vision until he's actually led outside. The next section, 12 through 17, the title of that section is not listed in your book. So the title of it is number 3, the report of Peter about the escape. So that's what 12 through 17 is about, the report of Peter about the escape. So who's he going to report to? Verse 12 tells us, when this had dawned on him, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered. Why was Mary called the mother of John, also called Mark? You know who that is? It's the mother of Jesus, as far as I'm aware. Right? So Jesus is on the cross. Who's standing before him? Mary. Who else? There's only one disciple or one apostle that's standing at the foot of the cross. Well, there's Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and then there's John. And of the 7 different things that Jesus said while he was hanging on the cross, he addressed his mother, and he addressed John, who's Mark, and he said, "Behold your son." And to John he said, "Behold your mother." Okay? So kind of an adopted deal, right? As far as I can tell, and I didn't look deeply into this, but correct me, Jimmy, if I'm wrong on this, but this is the connection that's being made here. You have Mary and John. And then Peter's going to the house where many people had gathered and were praying. And I love this too. This is just full of humor in my mind. Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that she ran back without opening it and exclaimed, "Peter's at the door!" Leaves Peter at the door. "You're out of your mind," they told her. When she kept insisting that it was so, they said it must be his angel. But Peter kept on knocking. "Hey, you forgot me." That's my paraphrase. And when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet and described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. "Tell James and the brothers about this," he said. And then he left for another place. All right, so John Mark is the author of the Gospel of Mark. He's also the one who fled naked in the Garden of Gethsemane. So that must not be the same. Because John had fled, and then you have John. So you have John Mark, and then you have John who was there at the foot of the cross. So I'll have to look at it again. It must be the one who fled from the garden.
If you get confused, can you imagine?
Yeah, imagine you guys. That won't be on the test. But the one who wrote the Gospel of Mark is the one who fled naked in the Garden of Gethsemane. Which is, the great thing about that is in the Gospel, John records that of himself. The one that he wrote. He records the fact that he was the one that ran from the garden. And this house must have been a regular meeting place for the believers. If you remember, in the times of persecution, they were meeting in households, and sometimes they would have to meet secretly. And it's likely this was a locked door. That's why Peter couldn't get in there when the servant girl shut the door. So that's the situation they're in. Continues, verse 18, "In the morning there was no small commotion among the soldiers, I would imagine, as to what had become of Peter. After Herod had thorough search made for him and did not find him, he cross-examined the guards and ordered that they be executed." That's why they were looking for him quite intently. So it was a Roman tradition for the guards to be put to death whenever they would lose a prisoner. And that's what happened to these men. There's another time where you have a soldier that is about to kill himself when Paul is brought out of prison. And Paul stops him and shares the gospel with him. So there's another example of that kind of thing happening a little bit later in the book of Acts. We'll see that soon. Continues, then Herod went from Judea to Caesarea and stayed there a while. He had been quarreling with the people of Tyre and Sidon. They now joined together and sought an audience with him. Having secured the support of Blastus, a trusted personal servant of the king, they asked for peace because they depended on the king's country for their food supply. Continues, on the appointed day, Herod, wearing his royal robe, sat on his throne and delivered a public address to the people. They shouted, "This is the voice of a God, not of a man." Immediately, because Herod did not give praise to God, an angel of the Lord struck him down, and he was eaten by worms and died. So there goes the idea that God's different in the New Testament than he is in the Old Testament, right? You know, you always think, well, God will put people to death at the drop of a hat in the Old Testament when they're sinning, and especially in a situation like this where they are stealing glory or being blasphemous towards God. It happens in the New Testament as well, especially in these early days of the church. People needed to understand the power and the authority of God and his message. And of course, I think the fact that Herod had arrested Peter and had martyred one of the first apostles had something to do with this as well. They needed to see how powerless this king was towards God's kingdom, even after having tried to persecute the leaders of God's kingdom. So he's struck down by an angel, eaten by worms, and died. Not a fun parade to attend, or political event. But the word of God continued to increase and spread. So this would be Luke's third summary of the growth, that's a blank, growth of the church. The persecutor is destroyed, and the church continues to grow. All right? So that's a check-in on what's happening with Peter. Then we switch over to see what's going on with Barnabas and Saul. When Barnabas and Saul had finished their mission, they returned from Jerusalem, taking with them John, also called Mark. All right? Now, at this point, this is going to be kind of a team. Barnabas and Mark and John. Barnabas and Saul and John. Later, there's going to be issues with this team, and we'll see that in a little bit. But before we get to that, let's see how much we know and remember from what we've studied so far with a quick little check-in on a unit test. So let me grab that. And I want to give you an opportunity to just write down whatever answers, like keep a tally of the number of the answers you get correct, and then we will see who gets the most, and maybe do a tiebreaker if we have to, and see who will be enjoying Starbucks, a cup of water with the $5 gift. Okay? All right. So the first ones are going to be true, false, and then we'll do multiple choice. These can be cumulative, but they will focus in on chapters, basically the last 3 chapters of Acts, which would include chapter 12, what we just covered. Okay? True or false? Philip was told to go to the desert road between Jerusalem and Gaza, where he met Cornelius the centurion. True or false? Philip was told to go to the desert road between Jerusalem and Gaza, where he met Cornelius the centurion. The answer is false. Philip was the one who met the Ethiopian eunuch. The centurion sent for Peter, if you remember. Number 2, True, false. The men who were traveling with Saul heard the sound but did not see anyone while Saul was talking with Jesus. True or false? They heard the sound but did not see anyone while Saul was talking with Jesus. That is true. They did hear, but they did not see. Why do you think that little detail is important? Any idea? This is kind of making a deep connection with something that we've talked about as a theme through the book of Acts. Specifically when it comes to apostles.
Miracles.
Miracles is part of it, but there was a qualification
But he could only see us.
that they had to have been with Jesus, right? So in this sense, this is what Paul refers to as his encounter with Jesus, to have been with Jesus. He saw Jesus, encountered him. Well, there were other people that were traveling with Saul that day who could have very well said that same thing, but the fact that they did not see Jesus in that encounter disqualified them from having that same experience that Saul had, which would have qualified him to be an apostle. Okay, so that's why that's a little detail that is actually important when you think of it theologically. So, number 3, true, false. Saul was chosen by God as a special messenger to the Gentiles. True or false? Saul was chosen by God as a special messenger to the Gentiles. That is true. Even though he was a Pharisee, he would become a messenger to the Gentiles. Okay, next one. I got this one wrong originally when I was in school. After becoming a Christian, Saul immediately went to Jerusalem so he could be instructed by the apostles. True or false? After becoming a Christian, Saul immediately went to Jerusalem so he could be instructed by the apostles. The answer is false. And quite remarkable to notice this later, coming back and studying it, but Saul went home to Tarsus, right after Damascus for a long period of time until Barnabas kind of brought him out, encouraged him, got him into ministry. All right, the next one, true, false. Jews held Gentiles in utter contempt. That is true. Jews held Gentiles in utter contempt. Next one, when Peter entered his house, Cornelius fell at his feet in reverence. When Peter went into Cornelius' house, Cornelius fell at Peter's feet in reverence. Is that true or false? It is true. And Peter kind of tells him, don't do that. Not a good idea. But Cornelius is one of those that has no idea about there being one true God until he starts to study and understand more. And so Peter is able to teach him those things. So next thing, Jews were permitted to socialize with Gentiles as long as none of their customs were adopted. True or false? False. This is why it was so offensive when, it could have been so offensive when Peter went to the house of Cornelius. And while Peter had so much trouble going there, that's why he had the vision and all that that God had provided before he went to Cornelius' house. Okay, and then the next one, hopefully this will be easy for you to get. True or false? Peter was guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each and slept chained between the 2 of them. That is true. That is true. Well, some people might have not been paying attention to that part. I've been known to forget things right after I heard them, like names. All right. So those are the true false ones. Here we go with some multiple choice, okay? From which prophet was the Ethiopian reading when he was on the road between Gaza and whatever when Philip had encountered him? Which prophet was the Ethiopian reading from? A, Isaiah, B, Jeremiah, C, Ezekiel, or D, Daniel?
A.
It is A. He was reading from the scroll of Isaiah. The next one, to which city was Saul heading when Jesus appeared to him? A, Samaria, B, Damascus, C, Antioch, D, Tarsus. B is the answer, Damascus. Saul is from Tarsus. He went back to Tarsus after he was in Damascus. But he was on the road to Damascus with letters, if you'll remember the... actually, no, this may give you some other answers. So here we go. What was Saul intending to do with the Christians he found there? A, bar them from all the synagogues. B, put them in prison there. C, bring them back to Jerusalem for trial. D, execute them immediately. The answer is C, bring them back to Jerusalem for trial. So Saul, according to the Jewish law and the way the Romans had it set up with the Jewish people, couldn't himself just put people in prison. He essentially had arrest warrants to arrest them and bring them to Jerusalem to stay in trial, to be put in prison eventually, and potentially martyred. So C's the answer. The next one, which of the following facts are true about Saul during the 3 days following his experience? Which are true? A, blind. B, ate and drank nothing. C, prayed. D, all of the above. The answer is D, all of the above. We talked a lot about how important it was for Saul to have that time of dependency and reflection in order to experience and comprehend the transformation that's about to happen. And what's remarkable is that just that quick encounter with Jesus was not the sole, total sum of everything he needed to be transformed as a person. You know, you think if you see Jesus on the road to Damascus, instantly you're going to be a saint. But Saul had some growing to do, like all of us, as we encounter Christ. All right, here's another one. Whom did the Lord send to Saul? A, Barnabas. B, Judas. C, Ananias. D, Philip. Who did the Lord send to Saul? The answer is C, Ananias. That's who was in Damascus, ready for, went in Damascus to go find Saul, to pray over him, and to baptize him. Barnabas comes later in introducing or letting the other apostles know that Saul was no longer a threat. All right? Shoot, I already gave this answer away. What's the answer here? Which city was Saul's hometown? A, Jerusalem. B, Tarsus. C, Antioch. D, Damascus. Answer is B, Tarsus. How did Saul escape from Damascus? A, in a basket lowered over the wall at night. B, in a cart filled with straw. C, disguised as a woman. D, hidden in a bundle on a camel's back. A, in a basket lowered over the wall at night. Just about as humiliating as any of the other ones. Who helped Saul convince the apostles and other Christians in Jerusalem that his conversion was genuine? A, Peter. B, James, the Lord's brother. C, John. Or D, Barnabas. Answer is D, Barnabas. Whom did Peter raise from the dead in Joppa? A, Dorcas. B, Martha. C, Mary. D, Tamara. The answer is A, Dorcas. That's a name you should probably remember. It's not a common name, but that, we didn't spend a lot of time in that event. But that's who was raised from the dead in Joppa. All right, we got two more. Who was sent by the brethren in Jerusalem to check on the conversion of Gentiles in Antioch? Who was sent by the leaders in Jerusalem to check on the conversion of Gentiles in Antioch? A, Peter. B, Barnabas. C, Saul. Or D, John? That's a little tricky. The answer is B, Barnabas. You can associate Barnabas as the guy who's the accepting one, the one who's able to bring the outsider in, the encourager, the son of encouragement. And he's the one that they send to Antioch to see if the conversions are genuine. And what did he see? This is an extra. But what did he see to convince him? when he got to Antioch. He basically saw the Pentecost all over again, right? They were speaking in tongues. Remember that? So basically the Holy Spirit fell when Peter was preaching, didn't even get to the end of the sermon before they started speaking in tongues and all of that. And so he was able to witness what was happening. All right? Last one. To whose house did Peter go after his rescue by the angel? This was a big confusing time. A, Mary, mother of Jesus. B, Mary and Martha. Mary Magdala. D, Mary, mother of John Mark. D is the answer, not Mary, mother of Jesus. So there you go. The answer to the confusing question. All right. How many of you, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 19. How many of you got at least 10 of them right? All right. How many of you 15? All right. How many did you get right?
18.
18?
Whoa.
19. You got 18? All right, we got a tiebreaker between two heavy hitters, two Avalon heavy hitters. We got a Dowdy versus a Bennett. This is going to be good. Pick your horse. Let me see if I can find a good question here. All right. All right. I might just read one of these and you have to give me the answer. I won't give you the multiple choice, okay? Well, none of these are really good. How about this? How long did Saul and Barnabas work in Antioch? Raise your hand if you know. How long did Saul and Barnabas work in Antioch? All right. If you don't know, I'll give you the multiple choice. And the first one who raises their hand, so help me with this, Steve. Was it 6 months? 12 months? Yes, Miss Shirley?
6 months?
No! 12 months is the right answer. 12 months. Congratulations. You have won yourself a gift certificate to Starbucks, and Steve will provide that before you leave.
She couldn't take it.
Well, that was fun.
Speak for yourself.
Some, that's speak for yourself. I understand that. Yeah, we're hard on you with that.
I know.
Well, let's get a little bit further in.
How about go over to the empties here, number 5, the Denver?
Yeah, are you want some answers?
Yeah.
To what? The questions or the blanks?
Blanks of blanks.
The blanks.
That
All right, we'll do a quick review and then we'll do prayer and then we'll be done. We'll go to lunch, okay? So the blanks that we covered today is what you're looking for, right?
looking at.
All right, time of peace in chapter 10 is now over. Herod Agrippa is the grandson of Herod the Great. Herod wanted to win support of the Jews. First recorded persecution of government. So far, persecutions only come from the Jews. James, the brother of John, first of the 12 apostles, martyred. Peter, heavily guarded 24 hours a day. The escape happened as a result of prayers of the church. And Peter believes that he's only seeing a vision until he's actually led outside. And then Gospel of Mark. And naked. And house must have been a regular meeting place for the believers. Account. Oh, I didn't give you the last few ones. The death of Herod Agrippa is a. Yeah, the account is attested to by a famous Jewish historian named Josephus. Josephus never became a Christian. But he was hired by I believe the Roman government to keep a history of the Jewish people. And he's one of the most accurate sources we have of church history, specifically from the perspective of a Jew in the first century. So that name's important, Josephus. The other one, Luke's third summary of the growth of the church. The persecutor is destroyed, but the church continues to grow. All right?
Okay, got it.
Well, that's neat. We'll continue with this next section here, church to the ends of the earth. So this will be the last geographical chunk that Luke focuses in on with the rest of the book in fulfillment of Jesus' Great Commission. So thank you for your time for that.